Welcome to the AI Research Roundup. I'm Alex. Today we're looking at a paper from the Hugging Face trending list, published on November 19, 2025, about 5 days ago. It shows that intrinsic dimension, a measure of how many degrees of freedom model representations really use, is not tied to prediction quality and sharply separates genres, with scientific prose at low intrinsic dimension around 8 and creative or opinion writing up at about 10.5. The paper is titled Unveiling Intrinsic Dimension of Texts, From Academic Abstract to Creative Story. And, as we will see later, the way they connect these geometry signals to style is surprisingly revealing. Figure 2 shows that all the different intrinsic dimension estimators largely agree with each other, which means they are measuring a consistent underlying notion of geometric complexity. An estimator here is just a recipe for turning embeddings into a single intrinsic dimension number. The darker green blocks on the diagonal bands indicate strong correlations, and the pH-dim rows line up especially well, so the authors treat pH-dim as their main practical choice. Figure 1 makes the key point that intrinsic dimension lives in the geometry of hidden states, while entropy depends on how those states align with the vocabulary. The left panel sketches this idea with blue token points and red unembedding vectors that can change entropy without changing shape. The middle scatter plot shows that raw cross entropy loss and pH-dim still correlate somewhat. The right scatter plot shows that once the loss is normalized by text length, that correlation nearly vanishes, so geometric complexity and prediction difficulty become essentially independent. Figure 5 shows how intrinsic dimension, measured as pH-dim from the GEMMA encoder, varies across text sources and clusters into low, medium, and high groups. Scientific and medical datasets like PubMed and ArXiv sit in the low blue band, meaning their representations need fewer degrees of freedom. Mixed factual and summarization sources fall in the green middle band. Opinionated, informal, and fictional domains, such as Reddit and WP, lie in the red high band, so they demand the richest geometric structure. Figure 7 shows which sparse autoencoder features light up most strongly for each text source, so it visually separates scientific from humanized writing styles. The bright bands near the top rows mark scientific domains like PubMed and ArXiv, where formal academic features dominate. The bright blocks at the very bottom row, for WP fiction, mark strongly humanized features such as personal voice and narrative structure. This contrast matters because the scientific cluster aligns with low intrinsic dimension, while the humanized cluster aligns with high intrinsic dimension. Table 1 explains what the strongest sparse autoencoder features actually mean for writing style and for intrinsic dimension. The top block lists features that correlate negatively with intrinsic dimension, such as academic reframing or social science survey tone, which push text toward tight, formal report prose. The bottom block lists features that correlate positively, like personalization, conversational asides, and richer narrative detail, which make texts more humanized and geometrically complex. The final column shows how deliberately steering each feature changes generated text, for instance adding bulletized outlines or injecting chatty forum voice. Alright, wrapping up, 2 takeaways stand out. Intrinsic dimension captures geometric complexity that prediction loss simply misses, and it cleanly separates genres, with scientific prose representationally simple, while humanized fiction and opinion need many more degrees of freedom. That matters for evaluation and training data choices. That is it for this episode of the AI Research Roundup. I am Alex, thanks for listening.